want to talk this morning about what you're worth. You specifically, what are you worth? It's kind of an entertaining question from a number of perspectives. Philosophically, it's an interesting question, and as with many things, the answer to the question really depends on what the context is, and others who have gone before me have also attempted to answer this question from a number of different perspectives, some of them more serious than others. So here's a kind of a more fun one. There's a magazine out there called Data Genetics, and the good people at Data Genetics magazine decided to tackle this from a purely physical manner. So they thought, you know what? They took this thought experiment to pretty impressive levels. They said, what if we could put a person in a machine? We take Kevin, we put him in this machine. We call it the Superb Person Atomizing Machine, or the SPAM for short. And we reduce him to his elements, like just his absolute elements. What would come out? And you think, okay, percentage-wise, what are my elements, right? So element-wise, we know that we're mostly water, right? Here we go. Here's our elements and the percentage of each one of these that we are. So 60, if we're H2O, hydrogen, oxygen, we know that. So there we go. Most of us is oxygen. The next element being carbon has 65%, 18%, 10% hydrogen. It's the other part of the water. Nitrogen, calcium. And then we get right down to where we get like iron, which is like a point of a percentage here. So what they said was, if this is what we're made of, how much is this stuff worth? And, if we worked out the price per kilogram, what is Kevin worth per kilogram? So most of this stuff looks pretty cheap to me. Oxygen is probably not that expensive. Carbon, hydrogen. Now look, if you get right down here, we get some more costly stuff. Silver, I am 0.00001% silver, and gold, I am 0.00014 of gold. So that is in my body right now, and in all of our bodies, but there's just not very much of it. And that's kind of interesting. What also makes that me think of is, when Peter told the guy who couldn't walk, silver and gold have I none, he wasn't entirely being accurate. He has 0.00001% in his body. So of these elements, when you figure out how much we have of it, which one do you think has the most worth when you consider how much we're walking around with? Just shout them out here if you think it's the oxygen. We got the most of the oxygen. What was that, Jody? Potassium. Wow, why do you say potassium?
Because it seems expensive.
It seems expensive. Anyone want to go up against Jody on this one? Okay, everyone's 100% on board with this potassium answer. What about the gold? Gold's worth quite a bit. No? Okay, all right, here we go. Well, Jody, I don't know if you've been looking over my notes, buddy. But, we can go down here and say, look, oxygen, we have a lot of it, and it's worth 20 cents per kilogram, so you have about $10 worth of oxygen on your body at any given time. Carbon isn't worth very much. It's only worth about a penny a kilogram, so you got 18 cents worth on you at any time. Nitrogen, 41 cents worth, 11 cents of calcium, and then, potassium. Jody, well done. You're a potassium master. I had no idea that potassium was at $650 per kilogram, and when you weigh that out, that actually comes out pretty good. And then, what's this one? Sodium, 250 per. So most of our value, it looks like, is coming from the potassium and the sodium. As for the silver and gold, I thought I would bring that in here. $700 per kilogram of silver, but there's just not enough of it to be even 1 cent. Gold is $40,000 per kilogram, and we have 1 penny's worth of gold on us at all time in our system. The grand total, if you add all that up, our elements are worth 160 US dollars or 207 Canadian dollars.
I'll give you 100.
Give me a talk to Charlotte, maybe. Okay, yeah, but, you've heard the expression, greater than the sum of its parts. So, if you were to, maybe not break me down to my chemical composition, maybe you would sell me off for parts. Because we have a lot of organs, and all those organs can fetch a lot of value. So if you were to take all my organs and sell them out there, which one do you think would be worth the most? Brain. You overestimate my brain. Lungs, kidney, heart, liver, cornea, skeleton. Which one's the most valuable, do you think? Heart. Yeah, that's a good answer. The second most valuable, what do you think? This is this one was the more tricky, I think. Liver, lungs. Let's take a look here. So, the heart is about 425,000 pounds. This is in pounds. I'm sorry, I got all these units from different countries. That's 722 Canadian, $722,000 Canadian for a heart. Lungs is the next one. Who said lungs? Yeah, Mom and Sid. Lungs, you've got $350,000 if you were to take my lungs today, which I might need later. So I can say to Charlotte, don't put me in the atomizer. Sell me for parts. I'm more valuable that way. You'll get a lot more value for me that way. Anyhow, that's kind of interesting. All right. And if I was to get some other definitions of what I'm worth, if I went to like a financial planner, they could say, okay, well, here's all your value. Here's all your assets. You have a house, you have this in the bank, you have whatever, and then they'll take it away from my liabilities or whatever it is. They're like, okay, but you have a mortgage on that house, so we got to subtract some of that. You have, credit line, you have a car or whatever, and they would subtract it, and that's how they would come up with my worth, what my assets are minus my vulnerabilities. If we had insurance guys here, we don't have insurance guys here, do we? We're not in Brantford or Toronto where they have insurance guys. But they could shed some light on what a person is worth from their perspective. Like life insurance. If I was to pass on, what would I be worth to the people I leave behind? It's always interesting when you read those things and you read like the ones we get from work have all the dismemberment clauses, and you're like, wow, like that must have been a slow day in the office when they came up with that one. Eh? It's like, hey Jeff, what if his legs came off? We get a little bonus for that? Oh yeah, sure. Like a slow day in the insurance guy's office there. Does anyone know what K&R insurance is? Kidnap and ransom. Yeah, that's from our traveling guy here. It's kidnap and ransom is you get insurance if you're going to countries, like Mexico, Africa, Brazil. Kidnapping is not uncommon for money. The going rate is between $1 and $5 million. That is your value if you were kidnapped in one of those countries. Depends on how valuable you seem to be. So if you were a bank executive or something, they might get closer to that $5 million mark. But if a regular Joe like me, it'd be bargain basement prices. But the insurance starts at $500 per year, and it goes up to $2,000 per year. And maybe to them that's what I am worth. Maybe if I was kidnapped down there, I don't know if they would pass the hat around here and say, how much do we want to get Kevin back? And you guys could see, how much am I worth? All right, enough fun. Let's talk about this. What did Jesus say about what you are worth? Jesus actually spends a lot of his teaching affirming the worth of people. All people everywhere, when he was on earth, both the sort of middle-class people who had time to come out and listen to a religious teacher all day speak, but as well as those people who were less privileged. And he lifted those people up with positive valuations. One of the most memorable times we hear about the valuations that Jesus was passing on from his Father. It's in Matthew chapter 10. And Jesus is sending his disciples out on a mission trip. I think this is their sort of first mission trip. And he's giving them this pep talk. And he's telling them, do not take any gold or silver or copper. Don't take that with you in your belts. No bag for the journey or extra shirt or sandals or staff. Don't pack your money. Don't pack your gold. Don't pack your silver, your copper. Not even traveler's checks or whatever, older times. Traveler's checks are old things. Don't bring an extra shirt. Don't bring shoes. I totally want you to trust God for this, okay? I want you to go out there, and I totally want you to be in God's hands. And I don't want you to have these, false security blankets of money and things like that. I want you to know where your power is coming from, and it's not from that preparedness. I want you to just go in faith. And Jesus says, yeah, that's kind of well, okay, he didn't actually say that here, but this is my kind of reading of it. That's scary to go without that kind of security thing. But don't be afraid. And here's why. Are not sparrows sold 2 for a penny? Yeah, one of them will not fall to the ground outside your Father's care. Even the hairs on your head are numbered. So don't be afraid. You're worth more than many sparrows. Whoever acknowledges me before others, I will acknowledge before my Father in heaven. Whoever disowns me before others, I will disown before my Father in heaven. Jesus says, consider the sparrow. It's like, back then it was like the cheapest bird you could buy. And it was like cheap food back then. They would pluck it and put it on a skewer and do it over the fire. And maybe, in the marketplace, you would see them 2 for a penny. You could buy them and eat them. Maybe Jesus was walking through the market when he was talking to his disciples about that and said, hey, consider those sparrows. They're sold 2 for a penny. But again, Jesus could have picked any bird to illustrate his point. He had an entire animal kingdom to choose from, and he had very good knowledge of all of that. But he picks this very, very humble bird, and it just speaks to me more about how he's so partial to the overlooked and looked down upon over the beautiful and the rich. And anyhow, he says, not one of these falls to the ground without your Father's care. It's not random out there. It's not chaos. There's order. Your Father in heaven watches. Your Father loves. And so much, even the hairs on your head are numbered. And maybe the busy world doesn't see you, but God sees you. God treasures you, and God cares for you. So don't be afraid. You can trust him and know your worth. Your worth to God. Jesus was underlining and illustrating. All right. And here's another part where I think really is talking. Jesus is talking about how he values people and how God values people. You remember Jesus was out and teaching, and people were judging Jesus all the time. Who is he? What kind of man is he? And some of the Pharisees and teachers of the law would judge Jesus by what they had already prejudged the people who Jesus was hanging around. So they would say, oh, tax collectors and sinners were crowding all around and listening to Jesus. So the Pharisees and teachers of the law of Moses started grumbling, this man is friendly with sinners. He even eats with them. By this valuation, these men looked at the company Jesus was keeping and said, what is this man worth? Look at the people he hangs out with. What is he worth? Not much. These people he hangs out with aren't worth much. These people he hangs out with are worth very little. And Jesus, as an answer to that, he gets right into these 3 parables. And Jesus is like, I don't think you understand. Let me make this plain. I'm going to give you 3 parables. And he gives the lost sheep and the lost coin and the prodigal son. So maybe we'll just go through those kind of quickly. Lost sheep, lost coin, prodigal son. They're all in Luke 15. All right, Luke 15, verse 3. And Jesus told them this story. If any of you has 100 sheep and one of them gets lost, what will you do? Won't you leave the 99 in the field and go look for the lost sheep until you find it? And when you find it, you'll be so glad that you'll put it on your shoulders and carry it home. Then you'll call in your friends and your neighbors and say, let's celebrate. I found my lost sheep. Jesus said in the same way there will be more happiness in heaven because of one sinner who turns to God than over 99 good people who don't need to. So Jesus is answering the men who says, and he's pointing out, he's going to where the lost are, and Jesus is like, well, you're asking me why I'm hanging out here. You find the lost where the lost are. The shepherd didn't, from the comfort of his pen, start having classes to the sheep, how not to get lost. He went out to where the lost sheep was. And I think that's a reminder to us that we're, called to go out and to find these people who are hurting. And sometimes that means sitting and eating and loving people who might not look like us or act like us or talk like we do. But that's what Jesus did. The shepherd went out in the dark, and he wasn't satisfied until he carried it home. And this was the first answer that Jesus gave as to why he was eating with sinners and showed that they are worth so much to him. Now, of the 3 stories, this is probably the one that gets the least oxygen, the woman who has the 10 coins. Let's read it here. Luke 15, verse 8. Jesus told the people another story. What will a woman do if she has 10 silver coins and loses one of them? Well, won't she light a lamp, sweep the floor, and look carefully until she finds it? Then she'll call her friends and neighbors and say, let's celebrate. I found the coin I lost. Jesus said, in the same way, God's angels are happy when even one person turns to him. Woman has 10 coins. She loses one. She finds it. She has a party. You know, to me, reading this kind of casually, it's a bit stranger than the other two. You know, mainly last time I had a party, it costed me more than 10 coins to host it. The economy of this story didn't make a lot of sense to me. And also back then, you know, she lights a lamp to look for it. I don't know if you know much about the economy of light in older days, but like she was literally burning money looking for the money. Light costs a lot of money. Peasant, poor people didn't have light at night usually. So the economy of this are strange. The economics of this were strange to me. So I was kind of digging into it a little bit. The coin is described as a drachma in the original translation there, which for a peasant is equivalent to about 1 day's wages. So 10 coins, 10 days' wages. That's what she has there as savings. And you can do the math in your head as to what that typically would be worth for you today. So if today you lost 1 day's wages, think of your paycheck, what you think you make in 1 day. You know, if I lost 1 day's wages, you can bet I'd be looking for it. I'd be lighting up a lamp. I'd be looking for that. Now, there's commentators who said that a number of drachma would often be given as a dowry from a husband to a wife. And these coins could be woven into like a garment, like a headdress or something like that. So you picture this woman like wearing, sewing, like she has her drachma in her sewing, in her headpiece or whatever. And, you know, of course, the day or whatever, one takes it off. I got 9. There used to be 10 around here. And she would be shocked. You know, I think of like today, a husband gives his wife a ring of value to show, you know, and if Charlotte lost her wedding ring, and I said, oh, don't worry, honey, here you go, another wedding ring. You know, not the same thing. Not the same thing. She would be looking for that because it's very special to her. It was a token of my love to her, and it's very special. Another thing that some commentators were pointing out about this, back in those days, it would be kind of shocking for Christ to use a woman to represent himself in a metaphor. In this day and age, you know, maybe you can get away with that, but in those days, it just wasn't done. It might be the equivalent of me representing myself in a story to this crowd with like a gay man or a Muslim or something like that. It was just taboo. It just wasn't done. And to the religious men of the society of that time, you know, the worth of a Jewish man is like here. You wouldn't represent yourself as a woman in a story. But Jesus was doing just that. To him, women were worth so much more than the society at the time wanted to value them as. And he wasn't afraid to put himself metaphorically in that position and put himself in the role of the woman in the story. All right. The final story, the prodigal son. And what a story. It's longer, but I feel this one would have really hit the heart of those who were doing the criticizing. Once a man had 2 sons. This is still back in Luke 15. Once a man had 2 sons. The younger son said to his father, give me my share of the property. So the father divided his property between his 2 sons. Not long after that, the younger son packed up everything he owned and left for a foreign country, where he wasted all his money on wild living. He had spent everything, and when a bad famine spread through that whole land, soon he had nothing to eat. He went to work for a man in that country, and the man sent him to take care of pigs. He would have been glad to eat what the pigs were eating, but no one gave him a thing. Finally, he came to his senses and said, my father's workers have plenty to eat, and here I am, starving to death. I will go to my father. I'll say to him, Father, I've sinned against God in heaven and against you. I'm no longer good enough to be called your son. Treat me like one of your workers. The younger son got up and started back to his father. But when he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt sorry for him. And he ran to his son, and he hugged him, and he kissed him. And the son said, "Father, I've sinned against you and against God in heaven. I'm no longer good enough to be called your son." But the father said to his servants, "Hurry, bring the best clothes, put them on him. Give him a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Get the best calf and prepare it so we can eat and celebrate. This son of mine was dead, but now he's come back to life. He was lost, and now he's been found." They began to celebrate. And at this point in the story, I kind of wonder if Jesus kind of shifts his focus to those who were there, calling him out for eating with and drinking with sinners. I wonder if he kind of looks at them a little bit deeper with a meaningful gaze and says, well, the older son, he'd been out in the field. And when he came near the house, he heard the music and the dancing. So he called one of the servants over and asked, "What's going on here?" And the servant answered, "Well, your brother, he's come home safe and sound, and your father's ordered us to kill the best calf." And the older brother got so angry, he wouldn't even go in the house. And his father came out and begged him to go in. But he said to his father, "For years I've worked for you like a slave. I've always obeyed you. But you've never given me so much as a little goat so that I could have a little dinner with my friends. This other son of yours wasted your money on prostitutes. And now he's come home. You ordered the best calf to be killed for a feast." And his father replied, "My son, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we should be glad and celebrate. Your brother was dead, but now he's alive. He was lost and has been found." I think the teachers who criticized Jesus could very much tell when he was talking about them in the stories. And sometimes it says just that those men knew he was talking about them. When the other son, he questions the value of the prodigal son. When his brother questions the value of the prodigal son, he's like, your other son has wasted his inheritance on prostitutes, on wild living. He's not worthy of your grace. And I think probably both brothers would probably agree on that. The prodigal and the other brother would agree that the prodigal is not worthy of the Father's grace. But it's not the other brother's place to say what the value is. It's the Father's place to say what the value is. Our worth is defined by the one who made us. And that's what matters. I don't know if you've ever had a kid go missing in a shopping scenario or camping or whatever. Man, it's yeah. Remember the Long Point, right? Yeah. Whew, Pinery. And there's and then you find them and you go, and there's the rush of joy and relief and dread as your imagination thinks what could have happened and all of that. It's just such a rush of joy. Did you love your other child less at that moment? If you love your other child just as much. But there's the rush of joy for the lost child when that lost child is found again. And it doesn't take anything away from the other child who wasn't lost. But that's the joy of the running Father who runs to us. And that's the joy of the one who defines our worth. Okay, I'm just going to finish up with this one because we've talked about what elements are worth in our body. We've talked about what our components are worth. We've talked about what we're worth from a number of different aspects. If you were to ask an economist, what is something worth? What is a can of tomatoes worth? What is a truck full of turnips worth? What is a piece of gold worth? What is this shirt worth? What is anything worth? The economist would have a very simple answer for that. What is anything worth? What someone is willing to pay. Doesn't matter if it's a truck of turnips or an iPhone or whatever it is. Something is worth whatever someone is willing to pay. This morning, we remembered what someone was willing to pay for us. Pay with the abandonment of his Father in heaven. Pay with the embracing of a life of poverty and a very hard road. Pay in the road to a humiliating death that was excruciating. And on top of that, pay by taking God's judgment in those hours for us. And Jesus says, this is what you're worth. Who are you to argue? And when I think about that, I think I want to strive to be worthy. You know, the word worthy, the root word of that is worth. Worthy. I want to strive to be worthy of what God's worth of me is. Ephesians chapter 4, I urge you to live a life that's worthy of the calling you've been received. Be completely humble and gentle. We should return to this again and again, because I think we know what we should do, but it's important to return to the why. It's important to return to the why we should do what we should do. And it's wrapped up here, because someone was willing to pay this for you, and therefore that's your worth. You are worth what someone is willing to pay. And that's your reason to strive to be worthy. This I know.